Chapter 10 of the Mysteries of Paris, Volume 3. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Céline Major. The Mysteries of Paris, Volume 3 by Eugène. Chapter 10. Mont Saint Jean. It was just 2:00 by the dial of the prison of Saint Lazare. The cold, which had lasted for several days, had been succeeded by soft, mild, and almost spring weather. The rays of the sun were reflected in the water of the large square basin with its stone corners, formed in the centre of a courtyard planted with trees, and surrounded by dark, high walls pierced with a great many iron-barred windows. Wooden benches were fastened here and there in this large paved enclosure, which served for the walking place of the prisoners. The ringing of a bell announcing the hour of recreation, the prisoners came in throngs by a thick wicket door which was opened to them. These women, all clad alike, wore black skull caps and long loose gowns of blue woollen cloth, fastened around the waist by a band and iron buckle. There were there 200 prostitutes, sentenced for breach of the particular laws which control them and place them out of the pale of the common law. At first sight their appearance had nothing striking, but, after regarding them with further attention, there might be detected in each face the almost ineffaceable stigmas of vice, and particularly that brutishness which ignorance and misery invariably engender. Whilst contemplating these masses of lost creatures, we cannot help recollecting with sorrow that most of them have been pure and honest at least at some former period. We say most of them, because there are some who have been corrupted, vitiated, depraved, not only from their youth, but from their tenderest infancy, even from their very birth, if we may say so, and we shall prove it as we proceed. We ask ourselves, then, with painful curiosity, what chain of fatal causes could thus debase these unhappy creatures who have known shame and chastity? There are so many declivities, alas, which verge to that fall. It is rarely the passion of the depraved for depravity, but dissipation, bad example, perverse education, and, above all, want, which leads so many unfortunates to infamy. And it is the poor classes alone who pay to civilisation this impost on soul and body. When the prisoners came into the yard, running and crying out, it was easy to discern that it was not alone the pleasure of leaving their work that made them so noisy. After having hurried forth by the only gate which led to this yard, the crowd spread out and made a ring around a misshapen being, whom they assailed with shouts. She was a small woman, from 36 to 40 years of age, short, round-shouldered, deformed, and with her neck buried between shoulders of unequal height. They had snatched off her black cap, and her hair, which was flaxen, or rather a pale yellow, coarse, matted, and mingled with gray, fell over her low and stupid features. She was clad in a blue loose gown like the other prisoners, and had under her right arm a small bundle, wrapped up in a miserable, ragged, checked pocket-handkerchief. With her left elbow she endeavoured to ward off the blows aimed at her. Nothing could be more lamentably ludicrous than the visage of this unhappy woman. She was hideous and distorted in figure, with projecting features, wrinkled, tanned, and dirty, which were pierced with 2 holes for nostrils, and 2 small, red, bloodshot eyes. By turns wrathful and imploring, she scolded and entreated; but they laughed even more at her complaints than her threats. This woman was the plaything of the prisoners. One thing ought, however, to have protected her from such ill usage. She was evidently about to become a mother; but her ugliness, her imbecility, and the custom they had of considering her as a victim intended for common sport, rendered her persecutors implacable, in spite of their usual respect for maternity. Amongst the fiercest enemies of Mont Saint Jean, that was the unhappy wretch's name, La Louve was conspicuous. La Louve was a strapping girl of 20, active and powerfully grown, with regular features. Her coarse black hair was varied by reddish shades, whilst her blood suffused her skin with its hue. A brown down shaded her thin lips. Her chestnut eyebrows, thick and projecting, were united over her large and fierce eyes. There was something violent, savage, and brutal in the expression of this woman's physiognomy. A sort of habitual sneer, which curled her upper lip during a fit of rage, and exposing her white and wide apart teeth, accounted for her name of La Louve, the she wolf. Yet in that countenance there was more of boldness and insolence than cruelty; and, in a word, it was seen that, rather become vicious than born so, this woman was still susceptible of certain good impulses, as the inspectress had told Madame d'Harville. "Alas, alas! What have I done?" exclaimed Mont Saint Jean, struggling in the midst of her companions. "Why are you so cruel to me?" "Because it is so amusing." "Because you are only fit to be teased." "It is your business. Look at yourself, and you will see that you have no right to complain." "But you know well enough that I don't complain as long as I can help it. I bear it as long as I can." "Well, we'll let you alone, if you will tell us why you call yourself Mont Saint Jean." "Yes, yes, tell us all that directly." "Why, I've told you 100 times. It was an old soldier that I loved a long while ago, and who was called so because he was wounded at the battle of Mont Saint Jean, so I took his name. That's it. Now are you satisfied? You will make me repeat the same thing over and over and over." "If your soldier was like you, he was a beauty." "I suppose he was in the Invalids?" "The remains of a man." "How many glass eyes had he?" "And wasn't his nose of block tin?" "He must have been short of 2 arms and 2 legs, besides being deaf and blind, if he took up with you." "I am ugly, a monster. I know that as well as you can tell me. Say what you like, make game of me if you choose, it's all one to me. Only don't beat me, that's all, I beg." "What have you got in that old handkerchief?" asked La Louve. "Yes, yes, what is it?" "Show it up directly." "Let's see, let's see." "Oh, no, I beg!" exclaimed the miserable creature, squeezing up the little bundle in her hands with all her might. "What, must we take it from you?" "Yes, snatch it from her, La Louve." "Oh, you won't be so wicked! Let it go, I say." "What is it?" "Why, it's the beginning of my baby linen. I make it with the old bits of linen which no one wants, and I pick up. It's nothing to you, is it?" "Oh, the baby linen of Mont Saint Jean's little one! That must be a rum set out. Let's look at it." "The baby clothes, the baby clothes!" "She has taken measure of the keeper's little dog, no doubt." "Here's your baby clothes!" cried La Louve, snatching the bundle from Mont Saint Jean's grasp. The handkerchief, already torn, was now rent to tatters, and a quantity of fragments of stuff of all colours, and old pieces of linen half cut out, flew around the yard, and were trampled under feet by the prisoners, who halloed and laughed louder than before. "Here's your rags!" "Why, it is a rag picker's bag!" "Patterns from the ragman's!" "What a shop! And to sew all that rubbish!" "Why, there's more thread than stuff." "What nice embroidery!" "Here, pick up your rags and tatters, Mont Saint Jean." "Oh, how wicked! Oh, how cruel!" exclaimed the poor ill used creature, running in every direction after the pieces which she endeavoured to pick up in spite of pushes and blows. "I never did anybody any harm," she added, weeping. "I have offered, if they would let me alone, to do anything I could for anybody, to give them half my allowance, although I am always so hungry. But no, no, it's always so. What can I do to be left in peace? They haven't even pity of a poor woman in the family way. They are more cruel than the beasts. Oh, the trouble I had to collect these little bits of linen! How else can I make the clothes for my baby, for I have no money to buy them with? What harm was there in picking up what nobody else wanted when it was thrown away?" Then Mont Saint Jean exclaimed suddenly, with a ray of hope: "Oh, there you are, Goualeuse! Now, then, I'm safe. Do speak to them for me; they will listen to you, I am sure, for they love you as much as they hate me." La Goualeuse was the last of the prisoners who entered the enclosure. Fleur de Marie wore the blue woollen gown and black skull cap of the prisoners; but even in this coarse costume she was still charming. Yet, since her carrying off from the farm of Bouqueval, the consequences of which circumstance we will explain hereafter, her features seemed greatly altered; her pale cheeks, formerly tinged with a slight colour, were as wan as the whiteness of alabaster. The expression, too, of her countenance had changed, and was now imprinted with a kind of dignified grief. Fleur de Marie felt that to bear courageously the painful sacrifices of expiation is almost to attain restored position. "Ask a favour for me, Goualeuse," said poor Mont Saint Jean, beseechingly to the young girl. "See how they are flinging about the yard all I had collected, with so much trouble, to begin my baby linen for my child. What good can it do them?" Fleur de Marie did not say a word, but began very actively to pick up, one by one, from under the women's feet, all the rags she could collect. One prisoner ill temperedly kept her foot on a sort of little bedgown of coarse woollen cloth. Fleur de Marie, still stooping, looked up at the woman, and said to her in a sweet tone, "I beg of you let me pick it up. I ask it in the name of this poor woman who is weeping." The prisoner removed her foot. The bedgown was rescued, as well as most of the other scraps, which La Goualeuse acquired piece by piece. There remained to obtain a small child's cap, which two prisoners were struggling for and laughing at. Fleur de Marie said to them, "Be all good, pray do; let me have the little cap." "Oh, to be sure, it's for a harlequin in swaddling clothes, this cap is. It is made of a bit of gray stuff, with points of green and black fustian, and lined with a bit of an old mattress cover." The description was exact, and was hailed with loud and long continued shoutings. "Laugh away, but let me have it," said Mont Saint Jean; "and pray do not drag it in the mud, as you have some of the other things. I'm sorry you have made your hands so dirty for me, Goualeuse," she added, in a grateful tone. "Let me have the harlequin's cap," said La Louve, who obtained possession of it, and waved it in the air as a trophy. "Give it to me, I entreat you," said Goualeuse. "No; you want to give it back to Mont Saint Jean?" "Certainly I do." "Oh, it is not worth while. It is such a rag." "Mont Saint Jean has nothing but rags to dress her child in, and you ought to have pity upon her, La Louve," said Fleur de Marie, in a mournful voice, and stretching out her hand towards the cap. "You sha'n't have it," answered La Louve, in a brutal tone. "Must everybody always give way to you because you are the weakest? You come, I see, to abuse the kindness that is shown to you." "But," said La Goualeuse, with a smile full of sweetness, "where would be the merit of giving up to me, if I were the stronger of the two?" "No, no; you want to wheedle me over with your smooth, canting words, but it won't do. You sha'n't have it, I tell you." "Come, come now, La Louve, do not be ill natured." "Let me alone; you tire me to death." "Oh, pray do." "I will not." "Yes, do; let me beg of you." "Now don't put me in a passion," exclaimed La Louve, thoroughly irritated. "I have said no, and I mean no." "Take pity on the poor thing; see how she is crying." "What is that to me? So much the worse for her. She is our pain bearer (souffre douleur). "So she is," murmured out a number of the prisoners, instigated by the example of La Louve. "No, no, she ought not to have her rags back. So much the worse for Mont Saint Jean." "You are right," said Fleur de Marie, with bitterness. "It is so much the worse for her. She is your pain bearer; she ought to submit herself to your pleasure. Her tears and sighs amuse and divert you; and you must have some way of passing your time. Were you to kill her on the spot, she would have no right to say anything. You speak truly, La Louve; this is just and fair, is it not? Here is a poor, weak, defenceless woman, alone in the midst of so many, she is quite unable to defend herself, yet you all combine against her. Certainly your behaviour towards her is most just and generous." "And I suppose you mean to say we are all a parcel of cowards?" retorted La Louve, carried away by the violence of her disposition and extreme impatience at anything like contradiction. "Answer me, do you call us cowards, eh? Speak out, and let us know your meaning," continued she, growing more and more incensed. A murmur of displeasure against La Goualeuse, not unmixed with threats, arose from the assembled crowd. The offended prisoners thronged around her, vociferating the disapprobation, forgetting, or remembering but as a fresh cause of offence, the ascendency she had until the present moment exercised over them. "She calls us cowards, you see. What business has she to find fault with us? Is she better than we are, I should like to know? Ah, we have all been too kind to her. And now she wants to give herself fine lady airs and to domineer over us. If we choose to torment Mont Saint Jean, what need has she to interfere? Since it has come to this, I tell you what, Mont Saint Jean, you shall fare the worse for it in the future." "Take this to begin with," said one of the most violent of the party, giving her a blow. And if you meddle again with what does not concern you, La Goualeuse, we will serve you the same." "Yes, that we will." "But that is not all," said La Louve. "La Goualeuse must ask our pardon for having called us cowards. She must and she shall. If we don't put a stop to her goings on, she will soon leave us without the power of saying our soul is our own, and we are great fools not to have seen this sooner." "Make her ask our pardon." "On her knee." "On both knees." "Or we will serve her precisely the same as we did her protégé, Mont Saint Jean." "Down on her knees! Down with her!" "Lo! We are cowards, are we?" "Dare to say it again." Fleur de Marie allowed this tumult to pass away, ere she replied to the many furious voices that were raging around her. Then, casting a mild and melancholy glance at the exasperated crowd, she said to La Louve, who persisted in vociferating, "Will you dare to call us cowards again?" "You? Oh, no, not you! I call this poor woman, whom you have so roughly treated, whom you have dragged through the mud, and whose clothes you have nearly torn off, a coward. Do you not see how she trembles, and dares not even look at you? No, no, I say again, 'tis she who is a coward, for being thus afraid of you." Fleur de Marie had touched the right chord. In vain might she have appealed to their sense of justice and duty, in order to allay their bitter irritation against poor Mont Saint Jean. The stupid or brutalised minds of the prisoners would alike have been inaccessible to her pleadings; but, by addressing herself to that sentiment of generosity which is never wholly extinct, even in the most depraved characters, she kindled a spark of pity, that required but skilful management to fan into a flame of commiseration, instead of hatred and violence. La Louve, amid their continued murmurings against La Goualeuse and her protégée, felt, and confessed, that their conduct had been both unwomanly and cowardly. Fleur de Marie would not carry her first triumph too far. She contented herself with merely saying, "Surely, if this poor creature, whom you call yours, to tease, to torment, to ill use, in fact, your souffre douleur, be not worthy of your pity, her infant has done nothing to offend you. Did you forget, when striking the mother, that the unborn babe might suffer from your blows? And when she besought your mercy, 'twas not for herself, but her child. When she craves of you a morsel of bread, if, indeed, you have it to spare, 'tis not to satisfy her own hunger she begs it, but that her infant may live. And when, with streaming eyes, she implored of you to spare the few rags she had with so much difficulty collected together, it arose from a mother's love for that unseen treasure her heart so loves and prizes. This poor little patchwork cap, and the pieces of old mattresses she has so awkwardly sewed together, no doubt appeared to you fit objects of mirth; but, for my own part, I feel far more inclined to cry than to laugh at seeing the poor creature's instinctive attempts to provide for her babe. So, if you laugh at Mont Saint Jean, let me come in for my share of your ridicule." Not the faintest attempt at a smile appeared on any countenance, and La Louve continued, with fixed gaze, to contemplate the little cap she still held in her hand. "I know very well," said Fleur de Marie, drying her eyes with the back of her white and delicate hand, "I know very well that you are not really ill natured or cruel, and that you merely torment Mont Saint Jean from thoughtlessness. But consider that she and her infant are one. If she held it in her arms, not only would you carefully avoid doing it the least injury, but I am quite sure, if it were cold, you would even take from your own garments to cover it. Would not you, La Louve? Oh, I know you would, every one of you." "To be sure we would. Every one pities a tender baby." "That is quite natural." "And if it cried with hunger, you would take the bread from your own mouth to feed it with. Would not you, La Louve?" "That I would, and willingly, too. I am not more hard-hearted than other people." "Nor more are we." "A poor helpless little creature! Who could have the heart to think of harming it? They must be downright monsters." "Perfect savages." "Worse than wild beasts." "I told you so," resumed Fleur de Marie. "I said you were not intentionally unkind; and you have proved that you are good and pitying towards Mont Saint Jean. The fault consisted in your not reflecting that, although her child is yet unborn, it is still liable to harm from any mischief that befalls its mother. That is all the wrong you have done." "All the wrong we have done!" exclaimed La Louve, much excited. "But I say it is not all. You were right, La Goualeuse; we acted like a set of cowards; and you alone deserve to be called courageous, because you did not fear to tell us so, or shrink from us after you had told us. It is nonsense to seek to deny the fact that you are not a creature like us. It is no use trying to persuade ourselves you are like such beings as we are, so we may as well give it up. I don't like to own it, but it is so. And I may just as well confess it. Just now, when we were all in the wrong, you had courage enough, not only to refuse to join us, but to tell us of our fault." "That is true enough, and the fair faced girl must have had a pretty stock of courage to tell us the truth so plainly to our faces. But, bless you, these blue-eyed people who look so soft and gentle, if once they are worked up, they become courageous as lions. Poor Mont Saint Jean, she has good reason to be thankful to her." "What she says is true enough. We could not injure the mother without harming the child also." "I never thought of that." "Nor I either." "But, you see, La Goualeuse did. She never forgets anything." "The idea of hurting an infant! Horrible! Is it not? I'm sure there is not one of us who would do it for anything that could be offered us." Nothing is more variable than popular passion, or more abrupt than its rapid transition from bad to good, and even the reverse. The simple yet touching arguments of Fleur de Marie had effected a powerful reaction in favour of Mont Saint Jean, who shed tears of deep joy. Every heart seemed moved; for, as we have already said, the womanly feelings of the prisoners had been awakened, and they now felt a solicitude for the unhappy creature in proportion as they had formerly held her in dislike and contempt. All at once, La Louve, violent and impetuous in all her actions, twisted the little cap she held in her hand into a sort of purse, and feeling in her pocket brought out 20 sous, which she threw into the purse, then presenting it to her companions, exclaimed: "Here is my 20 sous towards buying baby clothes for Mont Saint Jean's child. We will cut them out and make them ourselves, in order that the work may cost nothing." "Oh, yes, let us." "To be sure, let us all join. I will for one. What a capital idea! Poor creature! Though she is so frightfully ugly, yet she has a mother's feelings, the same as another. La Goualeuse was right, it is really enough to make one cry one's eyes out to see what a wretched collection of rags the poor creature has scraped together for her baby. Well, I'll give 30 sous." "And I 10." "I'll give 20 sous." "I've only got 4 sous, but I'll give them." "I have no money at all; but I'll sell my allowance for to morrow, and put whatever any one will give for it into the collection. Who'll buy my to morrow's rations?" "I will," said La Louve. "So here, I put in 10 sous for you, but you shall keep your rations. And now Mont Saint Jean shall have baby clothes fit for a princess." To express the joy and gratitude of Mont Saint Jean would be wholly impossible. The most intense delight and happiness illumined her countenance, and rendered even her usual hideous features interesting. Fleur de Marie was almost as happy, though compelled to say, when La Louve handed to her the collecting cap: "I am very sorry I have not a single sou of money, but I will work as long as you please at making the clothes." "Oh, my dear heavenly angel!" cried Mont Saint Jean, throwing herself on her knees before La Goualeuse, and striving to kiss her hand. "What have I ever done to merit such goodness on your part, or the charity of these kind ladies? Gracious Father, do I hear aright? Baby things, and all nice and comfortable for my child! A real, proper set of baby clothes! Everything I can require! Who would ever have thought of such a thing? I'm sure I never should. I shall lose my senses with joy. Only to think that a poor, miserable wretch like myself, the make game of everybody, should all at once, just because you spoke a few soft, sweet words out of that heavenly mouth, have such wonderful blessings! See how your words have changed those who meant to harm me, but who now pity me and are my friends; and I feel as though I could never thank them enough, or express my gratitude. Oh, how very, very kind of them! How wrong of me to be offended and angry with what they said! How stupid and ungrateful I must have been not to perceive that they were only playing with me, that they had no intention of harming me! Oh, no! It was all meant for my good. Here is a proof of it. Oh, for the future,
If they like to knock me about ever so, I will not so much as cry out. Oh, I was too impatient when I complained before, but I will make up for it next time. 88 francs 7 sous," said La Louve, finishing her reckoning of the collection gathered by handing about the little bonnet. "Who will be treasurer till we lay out the money? We must not entrust it to Mont Saint Jean; she is too simple." "Let La Goualeuse take charge of it!" cried a unanimous burst of voices. "No," said Fleur de Marie; "the best way will be to beg of the inspectress, Madame Armand, to take charge of the sum collected, and to buy the necessary articles for Mont Saint Jean's confinement; and then, who knows? Perhaps Madame Armand may take notice of the good action you have performed, and report it, so as to be the means of shortening the imprisonment of all whose names are mentioned as being concerned in it. Tell me, La Louve," added Fleur de Marie, taking her companion by the arm, "are you not better satisfied with yourself than you were just now, when you were throwing about all Mont Saint Jean's poor baby's things?" La Louve did not immediately reply. To the generous excitement which a few moments before animated her features succeeded a sort of half savage air of defiance. Unable to comprehend the cause of this sudden change, Fleur de Marie looked at her with surprise. "Come here, La Goualeuse," said La Louve at last, with a gloomy tone; "I want to speak to you." Then, abruptly quitting the other prisoners, she led Fleur de Marie to a reservoir of water, surrounded by a stone coping, which had been hollowed out in the midst of an adjoining meadow. Near the water was a bench, also of stone, on which La Louve and La Goualeuse placed themselves, and were thus, in a manner, beyond the observation or hearing of their companions. CHAPTER XI. Chapter 11 of The Mysteries of Paris, Volume 3. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recorded by Céline Major. The Mysteries of Paris, by Eugène Sue. Chapter 11. Part 1. La Louve and La Goualeuse. We firmly believe in the influence of certain master minds so far sympathising with the masses, so powerful over them as to impose on them the bias of good or evil. Some, bold, enthusiastic, indomitable, addressing themselves to the worst passions, will rouse them, as the storm raises the foam of the sea; but, like all tempests, these are as ephemeral as they are furious. To these terrible effervescences will succeed the sullen reversion of sadness and restlessness, which will obtain supremacy over the most miserable conditions. The reaction of violence is always severe; the waking after an excess is always painful. La Louve, if you will, personifies this fatal influence. Other organisations, more rare, because their generous instincts must be fertilised by intelligence, and with them the mind is on an equality with the heart, others, we say, will inspire good, as well as some inspire evil. Their wholesome influence will gently penetrate into the soul, as the warm rays of the sun penetrate the body with invigorating heat, as the arid and burning earth imbibes the fresh and grateful dew of night. Fleur de Marie, if you will, personifies this benevolent influence. The reaction to good is not so sudden as the reaction to evil; its effects are more protracted. It is something delicious, inexplicable, which gradually extends itself, calms and soothes the most hardened heart, and gives it the feeling of inexpressible serenity. Unfortunately, the charm ceases. After having seen celestial brightness, ill-disposed persons fall back into the darkness of their habitual life. The recollections of sweet emotions which have for a moment surprised them are gradually effaced. Still they sometimes seek vaguely to recall them, even as we try to murmur out the songs with which our happy infancy was cradled. Thanks to the good action with which she had inspired them, the companions of La Goualeuse had tasted of the passing sweetness of these feelings, in which even La Louve had participated; but this latter, for reasons we shall describe hereafter, remained a shorter time than the other prisoners under this benevolent feeling. If we are surprised to hear and see Fleur de Marie, hitherto so passively, so painfully resigned, act and speak with courage and authority, it was because the noble precepts she had imbibed during her residence at the farm of Bouqueval had rapidly developed the rare qualities of her admirable disposition. Fleur de Marie understood that it is not sufficient to bewail the irreparable past, and that it is only in doing or inspiring good that a reinstatement can be hoped for.
We have said that La Louve was sitting on a wooden bench beside La Goualeuse. The close proximity of these two young girls offered a singular contrast. The pale rays of a winter sun were shed over them; the pure sky was speckled in places with small white and fleecy clouds; some birds, enlivened by the warmth of the temperature, were warbling in the black branches of the large chestnut trees in the yard; two or three sparrows, more bold than their fellows, came and drank in a small rivulet formed by the overflow of the basin. The green moss covered the stones of the fountain, and between their joints, here and there, were tufts of grass and some small creepers, spared by the frost. This description of a prison basin may seem puerile, but Fleur de Marie did not lose one of the details, but with her eyes fixed mournfully on the little verdant corner, and on this limpid water in which the moving whiteness of the clouds over the azure of the heavens was reflected, in which the golden rays of a lovely sun broke with beautiful lustre, she thought with a sigh of the magnificence of the nature which she loved, which she admired so poetically, and of which she was still deprived. "What did you wish to say to me?" asked La Goualeuse of her companion, who, seated beside her, was gloomy and silent. "We must have an explanation," said La Louve, sternly. "Things cannot go on as they are." "I do not understand you, La Louve." "Just now, in the yard, referring to Mont Saint Jean, I said to myself, 'I won't give way any more to La Goualeuse,' and yet I do give way now." "But I tell you it cannot continue so." "In what have I offended you, La Louve?" "Why, I am not the same person as I was when you came here; no, I have neither courage, strength, nor boldness." Then, suddenly checking herself, La Louve pulled up the sleeve of her gown, and, showing La Goualeuse her white arm, powerful and covered with black down, she showed her, on the upper part of it, an indelible tattooing, representing a blue dagger half plunged in a red heart. Over this emblem were these words: "Mort aux lâches, Martial, P.L.V., pour la vie; death to cowards, Martial, for life." "Do you see that?" asked La Louve. "Yes, and it is so shocking it quite frightens me," said La Goualeuse, turning away her head. "When Martial, my lover, wrote, with a red hot needle, these words on my arm, 'Death to cowards,' he thought me brave. If he knew my behaviour for the last 3 days, he would stick his knife in my body, as this dagger is driven into this heart; and he would be right, for he wrote here, 'Death to cowards,' and I am a coward." "What have you done that is cowardly?" "Everything." "Do you regret the good resolution you made just now?" "Yes." "I cannot believe you." "I say I do regret it, for it is another proof of what you can do with all of us. Didn't you understand what Mont Saint Jean meant when she went on her knees to thank you?" "What did she say?" "She said, speaking of you, that with nothing you turned us from evil to good. I could have throttled her when she said it, for, to our shame, it was true. Yes, in no time you change us from black to white. We listen to you, give way to our first feelings, and are your dupes, as we were just now." "My dupe, for having generously succoured this poor woman?" "Oh, it has nothing to do with all that!" exclaimed La Louve, with rage. "I have never till now stooped my head before a breathing soul. La Louve is my name, and I am well named. More than one woman bears my marks, and more than one man, too; and it shall never be said that a little chit like you can place me beneath her feet." "Me? And in what way?" "How do I know? You come here and first begin by insulting me." "Insult you?" "Yes. You ask who'll have your bread. I first say I. Mont Saint Jean did not ask for it till afterwards, and yet you give her the preference. Enraged at that, I rushed at you with my uplifted knife." "And I said to you, 'Kill me if you like, but do not let me linger long,' and that is all?" "That is all?" "Yes, that is all; and yet these words made me drop my knife, made me ask your pardon, yes, pardon of you who insulted me. Is that natural? Why, when I recovered my senses I was ashamed of myself. The evening you came here, when you were on your knees to say your prayers, why, instead of making game of you and setting all the dormitory on you, did I say, 'Let her alone, she prays, and has a right to pray'? Then the next day why were you and I and all the others ashamed to dress ourselves before you?" "I do not know, La Louve." "Indeed!" replied the violent creature, with irony. "You don't know? Why, no doubt it is because, as we have all of us said, jokingly, that you are of a different sort from us. You think so, don't you?" "I have never said that I thought so." "No, you have not said so, but you behave just as if it were so." "I beg of you to listen to me." "No, I have been already too foolish to listen to you, to look at you. Till now I never envied any one. Well, 2 or 3 times I have been surprised at myself. Am I growing a fool or a coward? I have found myself envious of your face, so like the Holy Virgin's, of your gentle and mournful look. Yes, I have even been envious of your chestnut hair and your blue eyes. I, who detest fair women because I am dark myself, wish to resemble you. I, La Louve, I! Why, it is but 8 days since, and I would have marked any one who dared but say so. Yet it is not your lot that would tempt one, for you are as full of grief as a Magdalen. Is it natural, I say, eh?"
"How can I account to you for the impression I make upon you?"
"Oh, you know well enough what you do, though you look as if you were too delicate to be touched."
"What bad design can you suppose me capable of?"
"How can I tell? It is because I do not understand anything of all this that I mistrust you. Another thing, too. Until now I have always been merry or passionate, and never thoughtful, but you have made me thoughtful. Yes, there are words which you utter that, in spite of myself, have shaken my very heart, and made me think of all sorts of sad things."
"I am sorry, La Louve, if I ever made you sad, but I do not remember ever having said anything."
"Oh," cried La Louve, interrupting her companion with angry impatience, "what you do is sometimes as affecting as what you say. You are so clever."
"Do not be angry, La Louve, but explain what you mean."
"Yesterday in the workroom I noticed you. You bent your head over the work you were sewing, and a large tear fell on your hand. You looked at it for a minute, and then you lifted your hand to your lips as if to kiss and wipe it away. Is this true?"
"Yes,"
said La Goualeuse, blushing. "There was nothing in this; but at the moment you looked so unhappy, so very miserable, that I felt my very heart turned, as it were, inside out. Tell me, do you find this amusing? Why, now, I have been as hard as flint on all occasions. No one ever saw me shed a tear, and yet, only looking at your chit face, I felt my heart sink basely within me. Yes, for this is baseness, pure cowardice; and the proof is that for 3 days I have not dared to write to Martial, my lover, my conscience is so bad. Yes, being with you has enfeebled my mind, and this must be put an end to. There's enough of it. This will else do me mischief, I am sure. I wish to remain as I am, and not become a joke and despised thing to myself."
"You are angry with me, La Louve?"
"Yes. You are a bad acquaintance for me, and if it continues, why, in a fortnight's time, instead of calling me the she wolf, they would call me the ewe. But no, thank ye, it shan't come to that. Martial would kill me; and so, to make an end of this matter, I will break up all acquaintance with you; and that I may be quite separated from you, I shall ask to be put in another room. If they refuse me, I will do some piece of mischief to put me in wind again, and that I may be sent to the black hole for the remainder of my time here. And this was what I had to say to you, Goualeuse."
Timidly taking her companion's hand, who looked at her with gloomy distrust, Fleur de Marie said: "I am sure, La Louve, that you take an interest in me, not because you are cowardly, but because you are generous hearted. Brave hearts are the only ones which sympathise in the misfortunes of others."
"There is neither generosity nor courage in it," said La Louve, coarsely; "it is downright cowardice. Besides, I don't choose to have it said that I sympathise with any one. It ain't true."
"Then I will not say so, La Louve; but since you have taken an interest in me, you will let me feel grateful to you, will you not?"
"Oh, if you like. This evening I shall be in another room than yours, or alone in the dark hole, and I shall soon be out, thank God!"
"And where shall you go when you leave here?"
"Why, home, to be sure, to the Rue Pierre Lescat. I have my furniture there."
"And Martial?" said La Goualeuse, who hoped to keep up the conversation with La Louve, by interesting her in what she most cared for.
Shall you be glad to see him again?"
"Yes, oh, yes!" she replied with a passionate air. "When I was taken up, he was just recovering from an illness, a fever which he had from being always in the water. For 17 days and 17 nights I never left him for a moment, and I sold half my kit in order to pay the doctor, the drags, and all. I may boast of that, and I do boast of it. If my man lives, it is I who saved him. Yesterday I burnt another candle for him. It is folly, a mere whim; but yet it is all one, and we have sometimes very good effects in burning candles for a person's recovery."
"And Martial, where is he now? What is he doing?"
"He is still on an island, near the bridge, at Asnières."
"On an island?"
"Yes, he is settled there, with his family, in a lone house. He is always at loggerheads with the persons who protect the fishing; but when he is once in his boat, with his double barrelled gun, why, they who approach him had better look out," said La Louve, proudly.
"What, then, is his occupation?"
"He poaches in the night; and then, as he is as bold as a lion, when some coward wishes to get up a quarrel with another, why, he will lend his hand."
"Where did you first know Martial?"
"At Paris. He wished to be a locksmith, a capital business, always with a red hot iron and fire around you, dangerous you may suppose, but then that suited him. But he, like me, was badly disposed, and could not agree with his master; and then, too, they were always throwing his father and one of his brothers in his teeth. But that's nothing to you. The end of it was, that he returned to his mother, who is a very devil in sin and wickedness, and began to poach on the river. He cannot see me at Paris, and in the daytime I go to see him in his island, the Ile du Ravageur, near Asnières. It's very near, though if it were farther off I would go all the same, even if I went on my hands and knees, or swam all the way, for I can swim like an otter."
"You must be very happy to go into the country," said La Goualeuse, with a sigh, "especially if you are as fond as I am of walking in the fields."
"I prefer walking in the woods and large forests with my man."
"In the forests? Oh, ain't you afraid?"
"Afraid? Oh, yes, afraid, I should think so. What can a she wolf fear? The thicker and more lonely the forest, the better I should like it. A lone hut in which I should live with Martial as a poacher, to go with him at night to set the snares for the game, and then, if the keepers came to apprehend us, to fire at them, both of us, whilst my man and I were hid in underwood. Ah, that would indeed be happiness!"
"Then you have lived in the woods, La Louve?"
"Never."
"Who gave you these ideas, then?"
"Martial."
"How did he acquire them?"
"He was a poacher in the forest of Rambouillet, and it is not a year ago that he was supposed to have fired at a keeper who had fired at him, the vagabond. However, there was no proof of the fact, but Martial was obliged to leave that part of the country. Then he came to Paris to try and be a locksmith, and then I first saw him. And he was too wild to be on good terms with his master, he preferred returning to his relations at Asnières, and poach in the river. It is not so slavish. Still he always regrets the woods, and some day or other we'll return to them. From his talking to me of poaching in forests, he has crammed my head with these ideas, and I now think that is the life I was born for. But it is always so. What your man likes you like. If Martial had been a thief, I should have been a thief. When one has a man, we like to be like him."
"And where are your own relations, La Louve?"
"How should I know?"
"Is it long since you saw them?"
"I don't know whether they are dead or alive."
"Were they, then, so very unkind to you?"
"Neither kind nor unkind. I was about 11 years old, I think, when my mother went off with a soldier. My father, who was a day labourer, brought home a mistress with him into our garret, and 2 boys she had, one 6 and the other my own age. She was a barrow woman. She went on pretty well at first, but after a time, whilst she was out with her fruit, a fishwoman used to come and drink with my father, and this the apple woman found out. Then, from this time, every evening, we had such battles and rows in the house that I and the 2 boys were half dead with fright. We all 3 slept together, for we had but one room. One day it was her birthday, St. Madeleine's fête, and she scolded him because he had not congratulated her on it.
From one word another arose, and my father concluded by breaking her head with the handle of the broom. I really thought he had killed her. She fell like a lump of lead, but la Mère Madeleine was hard lived, and hard headed also. After that she returned my father with interest all the blows he had given her, and once bit him so savagely in the hand that the piece of flesh remained between her teeth. I must say that these contests were what we may call the grande eau at Versailles. On common and working days the skirmishes were of a lighter sort; there were bruises, but no blood." "Was this woman unkind to you?" "Mère Madeleine? No, on the contrary. She was a little hasty, but, otherwise, a good sort of woman enough. But at last my father got tired, and left her and the little furniture we had. He came out of Burgundy, and most probably returned to his own country. I was 15 or 16 at this time." "And were you still with the old mistress of your father?" "Where else should I be? Then she took up with a tiler, who came to lodge with us. Of the two boys of Mère Madeleine, one, the eldest, was drowned at the Ile des Cygnes, and the other went apprentice to a carpenter." "And what did you do with this woman?" "Oh, I helped her to draw her barrow, made the soup, and carried her man his dinner; and when he came home drunk, which happened oftener than was his turn, I helped Mère Madeleine to keep him in order, for we still lived in the same apartment. He was as vicious as a sandy haired donkey when he was tipsy, and tried to kill us. Once, if we had not snatched his axe from him, he would certainly have murdered us both. Mère Madeleine had a cut on the shoulder, which bled till the room looked like a slaughter house." "And how did you become what we are?" said Fleur de Marie, hesitatingly. "Why, little Charlie, Madeleine's son, who was afterwards drowned at the Ile des Cygnes, was my first lover, almost from the time when he, his mother, and his brother came to lodge with us when we were but mere children. After him the tiler was my lover, who threatened else to turn me out of doors. I was afraid that Mère Madeleine would also send me away if she discovered anything. She did, however, but as she was really a good creature, she said, 'As it is so, and you are 16 years old and fit for nothing, for you are too self-willed to take a situation or learn a business, you shall go with me and be inscribed in the police books. As you have no relations, I will answer for you, as I brought you up, as one may say; and that will give you a position authorised by the government, and you will have nothing to do but be merry and dress smart. I shall have no uneasiness about you, and you will no longer be a charge to me. What do you say to it, my girl?' 'Why, I think indeed you are right,' was my answer. 'I had not thought of that.' Well, we went to the Bureau des Mœurs. She answered for me in the usual way, and from that time I was inscrite. I met Mère Madeleine a year afterwards. I was drinking with my man, and we asked her to join us, and she told us that the tiler had been sentenced to the galleys. Since then I have never seen her, but some one, I don't remember who, declared that she had been seen at the Morgue 3 months ago. If it were true, really so much the worse, for Mère Madeleine was a good sort of woman. Her heart was in her hand, and she had no more gall than a pigeon." Fleur de Marie, though plunged young in an atmosphere of corruption, had subsequently breathed so pure an air that she experienced a deeply painful sensation at the horrid recital of La Louve. And if we have had the sad courage to make it, it has been because all the world should know that, hideous as it is still 1,000 times less revolting than other countless realities. Ignorance and misery often conduct the lower classes to these fearful degradations, human and social. Yes, there is a crowd of hovels and dens, where children and adults, girls and boys, legitimate children and bastards, lying pell-mell on the same mattress, have continually before their eyes these infamous examples of drunkenness, violence, debauch, and murder. Yes, and too frequently, unnatural crimes at the tenderest age add to this accumulation of horrors. The rich may shroud their vices in shadow and mystery, and respect the sanctity of the domestic hearth, but the most honest artisans, occupying nearly always a single chamber with their family, are compelled, from want of beds and space, to make their children sleep together, sons and daughters, close to themselves, husbands and wives. If we shudder at the fatal consequences of such necessity almost inevitably imposed on poor but honest artisans, what must it be with work people depraved by ignorance or misconduct? What fearful examples do they not present to unhappy children, abandoned, or rather excited, from their tenderest youth to every brutal impulse and animal propensity? Have they even the idea of what is right, decent, and modest? Must they not be as strange to social laws as the savages of the New World? Poor creatures! Corrupted at their very birth, who in the prisons, whither their wanderings and idleness often lead them, are already stigmatized by the coarse and terrible metaphor, graines de bagne, seeds of the gaol; and the metaphor is a correct one. This sinister prediction is almost invariably accomplished. The galleys or the bridewell, each sex has its destiny. We do not intend here to justify any profligacy. Let us only compare the voluntary degradation of a female carefully educated in the bosom of a wealthy family, which has set her none but the most virtuous examples. Let us compare, we say, this degradation with that of La Louve, a creature as it were reared in vice, by vice, and for vice, and to whom is pointed out, not without reason, prostitution as a condition protected by the government. This is true. There is a bureau where she is registered, certificated, and signs her name; a bureau where a mother has a right to authorize the prostitution of her daughter, a husband the prostitution of his wife. This place is termed the Bureau des Mœurs, the office of manners. Must not society have a vice most deeply rooted, incurable in the place of the laws which regulate marriage, when power, yes, power, that grave and moral abstraction, is obliged not only to tolerate, but to regulate, to legalise, to protect, to render it less injurious and dangerous, this sale of body and soul, which, multiplied by the unbridled appetites of an immense population, acquires daily an almost incalculable amount. Goualeuse, repressing the emotion which this sad confession of her companion had made in her, said to her, timidly: "Listen to me, without being angry." "Well, what have you to say? I think I have gossiped enough; but it is no matter, as it is the last time we shall talk together." "Are you happy, La Louve?" "What do you mean?" "Does the life you lead make you happy?" "Here? At St. Lazare?" "No, when you are at home and free." "Yes, I am happy." "Always?" "Always." "You would not change your life for any other?" "For any other? What other life can there be for me?" "Tell me, La Louve," continued Fleur de Marie, after a moment's silence, "don't you sometimes like to build castles in the air? It is so amusing in prison." "Castles in the air? About what?" "About Martial." "About my man?" "Yes." "Ma foi! I never built any." "Let me build one for you and Martial." "Bah! What's the use of it?" "To pass away time." "Well, let's have your castle in the air." "Well, then, only imagine that a lucky chance, such as sometimes occurs, brings you in contact with a person who says, 'Forsaken by your father and mother, your infancy was surrounded by such bad examples that you must be pitied, as much as blamed, for having become—'" "Become what?" "What you and I have become," replied Goualeuse, in a soft voice; and then she continued, "Suppose, then, that this person were to say to you, 'You love Martial, he loves you; do you and he cease to lead an improper life; instead of being his mistress, become his wife.'" La Louve shrugged her shoulders. "Do you think he would have me for his wife?" "Except poaching, he has never committed any guilty act, has he?" "No. He is a poacher in the river, as he was in the woods, and he is right. Why, now, ain't fish like game, for those to have who can catch them? Where do they bear the proprietor's mark?" "Well, suppose that, having given up the dangerous trade of marauding on the river, he desires to become an honest man. Suppose he inspires, by the frankness of his good resolutions, so much confidence in an unknown benefactor that he gives him a situation, let us see, our castle is in the air, gives him a situation, say as gamekeeper, for instance. Why, I should suppose that, as he had been a poacher, nothing could better suit his taste. It is the same occupation, but in the right way." "Yes, ma foi!
It would be still to live in the woods."
"Only he would not have the situation but on condition that he would marry you and take you with him."
"I go with Martial?"
"Yes. Why, you said you should be so happy to live together in the depths of the forest. Shouldn't you prefer, instead of the miserable hut of the poacher, in which you would hide like guilty creatures, to have a neat little cottage, which you would take care of as the active and hard working housekeeper?"
"You are making game of me. Can this be possible?"
"Who knows what may happen? But it's only a castle in the air."
"Ah, if it's only that, all very well."
La Louve, I think that I already see you established in your little home in the depths of the forest, with your husband and 2 or 3 children. Children! What happiness! Are they not?"
"The children of my man!" exclaimed La Louve, with intense eagerness. "Ah, yes, they would be dearly loved, they would!"
"How they would keep you company in your solitude! And then, when they grew up, they would be able to render you great service. The youngest would pick up the dead branches for fuel; the eldest would go into the grass of the forest to watch a cow or 2, which they would give you as a reward for your husband's activity, for as he had been a poacher, he would make a better keeper."
"To be sure, that's true enough. But really your castles in the air are very amusing. Go on, Goualeuse."
"They would be very much satisfied with your husband, and you would have some allowances from your master, a poultry yard, a garden; and, in fact, you would have to work very hard, La Louve, from morning till night."
"Oh, if that were all, if I once had my good man near me, I should not be afraid of work. I have stout arms."
"And you would have plenty to employ them, I will answer for that. There is so much to do, so much to do! There is the stable to clean, the meals to get ready, the clothes to mend. To day is washing day, next day there's the bread to bake, or perhaps the house to clean from top to bottom; and then, the other keepers would say, 'There is no such manager as Martial's wife; from the cellar to the garret, in her house it is a pattern of cleanliness, and the children are taken such care of. But then she is so very industrious, Madame Martial.'" CHAPTER XI. Part II of The Mysteries of Paris, Volume 3. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Mysteries of Paris, Volume 3, by Eugène. Chapter XI. Part II of La Louve and La Goualeuse.
"Really, though, La Goualeuse, is it true? I should call myself Madame Martial?" said La Louve, with a sort of pride. "Madame Martial!"
"Which is better than being called La Louve, is it not?"
"Pardieu! Why, there's no doubt but I should rather be called by my man's name than the name of a wild beast. But, bah! bah! Louve I was born, Louve I shall die."
"Who knows? Who can say? Not to shrink from a life that is hard, but honest, will ensure success. So, then, work would not frighten you?"
"Oh, certainly not! It is not a husband and 4 or 5 brats to take care of that would give me any trouble."
"But then it would not be all work; there are moments for rest. In the winter evenings, when the children were put to bed, and your husband smoked his pipe whilst he was cleaning his gun or caressing his dogs, you would have a little leisure."
"Leisure! Sit with my arms crossed before me? Ma foi! No, I would rather mend the linen by the side of the fire in the evening. That is not a very hard job, and in winter the days are so short."
As Fleur de Marie proceeded, La Louve forgot more and more of the present for the dreams of the future, as deeply interested as La Goualeuse had been before her, when Rodolph had talked to her of the rustic delights of the Bouqueval farm. La Louve did not attempt to conceal the wild tastes with which her lover had inspired her. Remembering the deep and wholesome impression which she had experienced from the smiling picture of Rodolph in relation to a country life, Fleur de Marie was desirous of trying the same means of action on La Louve, thinking with reason that, if her companion was so far affected at the sketch of a rude, poor, and solitary life, as to desire ardently such an existence, she merited interest and pity. Delighted to see her companion listen to her with attention, La Goualeuse continued, smiling: "And then you see, Madame Martial, let me call you so, what does it matter?" Quite the contrary, it flatters me." Then La Louve shrugged her shoulders, and, smiling, also added, "What folly to play at, madame! Are we children? Well, it's all the same. Go on, it's quite amusing. You said " "I was saying, Madame Martial, that, in speaking of your life, the winter in the thickest of the woods, we were only alluding to the worst of the seasons." "Ma foi! No, that is not the worst. To hear the wind whistle all night in the forest, and the wolves howl from time to time far off, very far off, I shouldn't tire of that; provided I was at the fireside with my man and my children, or even quite alone, if my man was going his rounds. Ah, I am not afraid of a gun. If I had my children to defend, I could do that; the wolf would guard her cubs." "Oh, I can well believe you; you are very brave, you are. But I am a coward. I prefer spring to the winter, when the leaves are green, when the pretty wild flowers bloom, and they smell so sweet that the air is quite scented. And then your children would roll about so merrily in the fresh grass; and then the forest would be so thick that you could hardly see your house in the midst of the foliage. I can fancy that I see it now. In front of the house is a vine full of leaves, which your husband has planted, and which shades the bank of turf where he sleeps during the noonday heat, whilst you are going backwards and forwards, desiring the children not to wake their father. I don't know whether you have remarked it, but in the heat of summer, about midday, there is in the woods as deep silence as at midnight, you don't hear the leaves shake, nor the birds sing." "Yes, that's true," replied La Louve, almost mechanically, who became more and more forgetful of the reality, and almost believed she saw before her the smiling pictures which the poetical imagination of Fleur de Marie, so instinctively amorous of the beauties of nature, presented before her. Delighted at the deep attention which her companion lent her, La Goualeuse continued, allowing herself to be drawn on by the charm of the thoughts which she called up. "There is one thing which I love almost as well as the silence of the woods, and that is the noise of the heavy drops of rain falling on the leaves. Do you like that, too?" "Oh, yes, I am very fond of a summer shower." "So am I; and when the trees, the moss, and the grass are all moistened, what a delightfully fresh odour they give out! And then how the sun, as it passes over the trees, makes all the little drops of water glisten as they hang from the leaves! Have you ever noticed that?" "Yes, I remember it now because you tell me of it. Yet how droll all this is! But, Goualeuse, you talk so well that one seems to see everything just as you talk; and then I really do not know how to explain it all. But now, what you say seems good, it is quite pleasant, just like the rain we were talking of." "Oh, don't suppose that we are the only creatures who love a summer shower. The dear little birds, how delighted they are! How they shake their feathers, whilst they warble so joyously! Not more joyously, though, than your children. Your children as free and gay and light hearted as they. And then, look! As the day declines, the youngest children run across the wood to meet the elder, who brings back the 2 heifers from pasture, for they have heard the tinkling of the bell in the distance." "Yes, Goualeuse, I think I see the smallest and boldest, whom his brother has put astride on the back of one of the cows." "And one would say that the poor animal knows what burden she bears, she steps so carefully. But it is supper time. Your eldest child, whilst he has been tending the cows at pasture, has amused himself with gathering for you a basket of beautiful strawberries, which he has brought quite fresh under a thick covering of wild violets." "Strawberries and violets! Ah, what a lovely smell they have! But where the deuce did you find all these ideas, La Goualeuse?" "In the woods, where the strawberries ripen and the violets blow, you have only to look and gather them. But let us go on with our housekeeping. It is night, and you must milk your heifers, prepare your supper under the shelter of the vine, for you hear your husband's dogs bark, and then their master's voice, who, tired as he is, comes home singing; and who would not sing when on a fine summer's eve with cheerful heart you return to the house where a good wife and 5 children are waiting for you, eh, Madame Martial?" "True, true, one could not but sing," replied La Louve, becoming more and more thoughtful. "Unless one weeps for joy," continued Fleur de Marie, herself much touched, "and such tears are as sweet as songs. And then, when night has completely come, what a pleasure to sit in the arbour and enjoy the calmness of a fine evening, to breathe the sweet odour of the forest, to hear the prattle of the children! to look at the stars, then the heart is so full that it must pour out its prayer. It must thank him to whom we are indebted for the freshness of the evening, the sweet scent of the woods, the gentle brightness of the starry sky. After this thanksgiving or this prayer, we go to sleep tranquilly till the next day, and then again thank our Creator. And this poor hard-working but calm and honest life is the same each and every day." "Every day!" repeated La Louve, with her head drooping on her chest, her look fixed, her breast oppressed, for it is true the good God is good to give us wherewithal to live upon, and to make us happy with so little. "Well, tell me now," continued Fleur de Marie, gently, "tell me, ought not he to be blessed after God who should give you this peaceable and laborious life, instead of the wretched existence you lead in the mud of the streets of Paris?" This word Paris suddenly recalled La Louve to reality. A strange phenomenon had taken place in the mind of this creature. The simple painting of a humble and rude condition, the mere recital by turns, lighted up by the soft rays from the domestic hearth, gilded by some joyful sunbeams, refreshed by the breeze of the great woods, or perfumed by the odour of wild flowers, this narrative had made on La Louve a more profound or more sensible impression than could an exhortation of the most pious morality have effected. In truth, in proportion as Fleur de Marie spoke, La Louve had longed to be, and meant to be, an indefatigable manager, a worthy wife, an affectionate and devoted mother. To inspire, even for an instant, a violent, immoral, and degraded woman with a love of home, respect for duty, a taste for labour, and gratitude towards her Creator, and that by only promising her what God gives to all, the sun, the sky, the depths of the forest, what society owes to those who lack a roof and a loaf, was indeed a glorious triumph for Fleur de Marie. Could the most severe moralist, the most overpowering preacher, have obtained more in threatening, in their monotonous and menacing orations, all human vengeances, all divine thunders? The painful anger with which La Louve was possessed when she returned to the reality, after having allowed herself to be charmed by the new and wholesome reverie in which, for the first time, Fleur de Marie had plunged her, proved the influence of her words on her unfortunate companion. The more bitter were La Louve's regrets when she fell back from this consoling delusion to the horrors of her real position, the greater was La Goualeuse's triumph. After a moment's silence and reflection, La Louve raised her head suddenly, passed her hand over her brow, and rose, threatening and angry. See, I had reason to mistrust you, and to desire not to listen to you, because it would turn to ill for me. Why did you talk thus to me? Why make a jest of me? Why mock me? And because I have been so weak as to say to you that I should like to live in the depths of a forest with my man. Who are you, then, that you should make a fool of me in this way? You miserable girl, don't you know what you have done? Now, in spite of myself, I shall always be thinking of this forest, the house, and the children, and all that happiness which I shall never have, never, never. And if I cannot forget what you have told me, why, my life will be one eternal punishment, a hell, and that by your fault. Yes, by your fault." "So much the better, oh, so much the better!" said Fleur de Marie. "You say so much the better!" exclaimed La Louve, with her eyes glaring. "Yes, so much the better, for if your present miserable life appears to you a hell, you will prefer that of which I have spoken to you." "What is the use of preferring it, since it is not destined for me? What is the use of regretting that I walk the streets, since I shall die in the streets?" exclaimed La Louve, more and more irritated, and taking in her powerful grasp the small hand of Fleur de Marie. "Answer! Answer! Why do you try to make me desire that which I cannot have?" "To desire an honest and industrious life is to be worthy of that life, as I have already told you," replied Fleur de Marie, without attempting to disengage her hand. "Well, and what then? Suppose I am worthy, what does that prove? How much the better off will that make me?" "To see realised what you consider as a dream," answered Fleur de Marie, in a tone so serious and full of conviction that La Louve, again under control, let go La Goualeuse's hand, and gazed at her in amazement. Listen to me, La Louve," said Fleur de Marie, in a voice full of feeling. "Do you think me so wicked as to excite such ideas and hopes in you, if I were not sure that, whilst I made you blush at your present condition, I gave you the means to quit it?" "You can do this?"
No, but some one who is good and great and powerful."
"Great and powerful?"
"Listen, La Louve. 3 months ago I was like you, a lost, an abandoned creature. One day, he of whom I speak to you with tears of gratitude," and Fleur de Marie wiped her eyes, "one day he came to me, and he was not afraid, abased and despised as I was, to say comforting words to me, the first I had ever heard. I told him my sufferings, my miseries, my shame. I concealed nothing from him, just as you have related to me all your past life, La Louve. After having listened to me with kindness, he did not blame, but pitied me. He did not even reproach me with my disgraceful position, but talked to me of the calm and pure life which was found in the country." "As you did just now?" "Then my situation appeared to me the more frightful, in proportion as the future he held out to me seemed more beautiful."
"Like me?"
"Yes, and so I said as you did, 'What use, alas! is it to make me fancy this paradise, me who am chained to hell?' But I was wrong to despair, for he of whom I speak is so good, so just, that he is incapable of making a false hope shine in the eyes of a poor creature who asked no one for pity, happiness, or hope."
"And what did he do for you?"
"He treated me like a sick child. I was, like you, immersed in a corrupted air, and he set me to breathe a wholesome and reviving atmosphere. I was also living amongst hideous and criminal beings, and he confided me to persons as good as himself, who have purified my soul and elevated my mind; for he communicates to all those who love and respect him a spark of his own refined intelligence. Yes, if my words move you, La Louve, if my tears make your tears flow, it is that his mind and thought inspire me. If I speak to you of the happier future which you will obtain by repentance, it is because I can promise you this future in his name, although at this moment he is ignorant of the engagement I make. In fact, I say to you, hope, because he always listens to the voice of those who desire to become better, for God sent him on earth to make people believe in his providence." As she spoke, Fleur de Marie's countenance became radiant, and her pale cheeks suffused with a delicate carnation; her beautiful eyes sparkled, and she appeared so touchingly beautiful that La Louve gazed on her with respectful admiration, and said: "Where am I? Do I dream? Who are you, then? Oh, I was right when I said you were not one of us. But then you talk so well, you who can do so much, you who know such powerful people, how is it that you are here, a prisoner with us?" Fleur de Marie was about to reply, when Madame Armand came up and interrupted her, to conduct her to Madame d'Harville. La Louve remained overwhelmed with surprise, and the inspectress said to her: "I see with pleasure that the presence of La Goualeuse in the prison has brought good fortune to you and your companions. I know you have made a subscription for poor Mont Saint Jean; that is kind and charitable, La Louve, and will be of service to you. I was sure that you were better than you allowed yourself to appear. In recompense for this kind action, I think I can promise you that the term of your imprisonment shall be shortened by several days." Madame Armand then walked away, followed by Fleur de Marie. We must not be astonished at the almost eloquent language of Fleur de Marie, when we remember that her mind, so wonderfully gifted, had rapidly developed itself, thanks to the education and instruction she had received at Bouqueval farm. The young girl was, indeed, strong in her experience. The sentiments she had awakened in the heart of La Louve had been awakened in her own heart by Rodolph, and under almost similar circumstances. Believing that she detected some good instincts in her companion, she had endeavoured to lure her back to honesty, by proving to her, according to Rodolph's theory applied to the farm at Bouqueval, that it was her interest to become honest, by pointing out to her restitution to the paths of rectitude in smiling and attractive colours. And here let us repeat that, in our opinion, an incomplete as well as stupid and inefficacious mode is employed to inspire the poor and ignorant classes with a hatred of evil and a love of good. In order to turn them away from the bad path, they are incessantly threatened with divine and human vengeance; incessantly a sinister clank is sounded in their ears, prison keep, fetters, handcuffs.
and in the distance, in dark shadow, at the extreme horizon of crime, they have their attention directed to the executioner's axe glittering amidst the glare of everlasting flames. We observe that the intimidation is constant, fearful, and appalling. To him who does ill, imprisonment, infamy, punishment. This is just. But to him who does well does society award noble gifts, glorious distinctions? No. Does society encourage resignation, order, probity, in that immense mass of artisans who are for ever doomed to toil and privation, and almost always to profound misery, by benevolent rewards? No. Is the scaffold which the criminal ascends a protection for the man of integrity? No. Strange and fatal symbol! Justice is represented as blind, bearing in one hand a sword to punish, and in the other scales in which she weighs accusation and defence. This is not the image of justice. This is the image of law, or, rather, of the man who condemns or acquits according to his conscience. Justice should hold in one hand a sword, and in the other a crown, one to strike the wicked, and the other to recompense the good. The people would then see that, if there is a terrible punishment for evil, there is a brilliant recompense for good; whilst, as it is, in their plain and simple sense, the people seek in vain for the contrary side of tribunals, gaols, galleys, and scaffolds. The people see plainly a criminal justice, consisting of upright, inflexible, enlightened men, always employed in searching out, detecting, and punishing the evil doers. They do not see the virtuous justice, consisting of upright, inflexible, and enlightened men, always searching out and rewarding the honest man. All says to him, tremble; nothing says to him, hope. All threatens him; nothing consoles him. The state annually expends many millions for the sterile punishment of crimes. With this enormous sum it keeps prisoners and gaolers, galley slaves and galley sergeants, scaffolds and executioners. This is necessary? Agreed. But how much does the state disburse for the rewards, so salutary, so fruitful, for honest men? Nothing. And this is not all, as we shall demonstrate when the course of this recital shall conduct us to the state prison. How many artisans of irreproachable honesty would attain the summit of their wishes, if they were assured of enjoying one day the bodily comforts of prisoners, always certain of good food, good bed, and good shelter! And yet, in the name of their dignity as honest men, long and painfully tried, have they not a right to claim the same care and comforts as criminals, such, for instance, as Morel the lapidary, who had toiled for 20 years, industrious, honest, and resigned, in the midst of bitter misery and sore temptations? Do not such men deserve sufficiently well of society that society should try and find them out, and if not recompense them, for the honour of humanity, at least support them in the painful and difficult path which they tread so courageously? Is the man of worth so modest that he finds greater security than the thief or assassin? And are not these always detected by criminal justice? Alas, it is a utopia, but it is consoling. Suppose, for the moment, a society were so organized that it would hold an assizes of virtue as we have assizes of crime, a public ministry pointing out noble actions, disclosing them to the view of all, as we now denounce crimes to the avenging power of the laws. We will give 2 instances, 2 justices, and let our readers say which is most fruitful in instruction, in consequences, in positive results. One man has killed another, for the purpose of robbing him. At break of day they stealthily erect the guillotine in an obscure corner of Paris, and cut off the assassin's head before the dregs of the populace, which laughs at the judge, the sufferer, and the executioner. This is the last resort of society. This is the chastisement she bestows on the greatest crime which can be committed against her. This is the most terrible, the most wholesome warning she can give to her population, the only one, for there is no counterpoise to this keen axe, dripping with blood. No, society has no spectacle, mild and benevolent, to oppose to this funereal scene. Let us go on with our Utopia. Would it not be otherwise if almost every day the people had before their eyes some illustrious virtues greatly glorified and substantially rewarded by the state? Would it not be to encourage good continually, if we often saw an august, imposing, and venerable tribunal summoned before it, in presence of an immense multitude, a poor and honest artisan, whose long, intelligent, and enduring life should be described whilst he was thus addressed. For 20 years you have manfully struggled against misfortune, your family has been brought up by you in the principles of honour and rectitude, your superior virtues have greatly distinguished you, you merit praise and recompense. Society, always vigilant, just, and all powerful, never leaves in oblivion either good or evil. Every man is recompensed according to his works. The state assures to you a pension sufficient for your wants. Obtaining this deserved mark of public notice, you will end in leisure and ease a life which is an example to all. And thus are and will be exalted those who, like yourself, shall have struggled for many years with an admirable persistence in good, and given proof of rare and grand moral qualities. Your example will encourage a great many to imitate you. Hope will lighten the painful burden which their destiny imposes on them for so many years of their life. Animated by a salutary emulation, they will energetically struggle to accomplish the most arduous duties, in order that one day they may be distinguished from the rest, and rewarded as you are. We ask, which of the two sights, the beheaded assassin, or the good man rewarded, would act on the million with more salutary and more fruitful effect? No doubt many delicate minds will be indignant at the bare thought of these ignoble substantial rewards awarded to the most ethereal thing in the world, virtue. They will find all sorts of arguments, more or less philosophical, platonic, theological, and especially economic, against such a proposition, such as, virtue is its own reward. Virtue is a priceless gem. The satisfaction of the conscience is the noblest of recompenses. And finally, this triumphant and unanswerable objection: the eternal happiness which awaits the just in another life ought to be sufficient to encourage mankind to do well. To this we reply that society, in order to intimidate and punish the guilty, does not appear to us to rely entirely and exclusively on the divine vengeance, which they tell us will visit them in another world. Society anticipates the last judgment by human judgments. Awaiting the inexorable hour of the archangels in armour, with sounding trumpets and fiery swords, society modestly comforts herself with gendarmes. We repeat, to terrify the wicked, we materialise, or rather we reduce to human, perceptible, and visible proportions, the anticipated effects of divine wrath. Why should we not do the same with the divine rewards to worthy and virtuous people? But let us leave these mad, absurd, stupid, impracticable utopianisms, like real utopianisms, as they are. Society is as well as it is, as those merry souls who, with uncertain step, stupid look, and noisy laugh, have just quitted the gay banquet, if it is not. End of Chapter 11. Read by Céline Major. Chapter 12 of The Mysteries of Paris, Volume 3. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Mysteries of Paris, Volume 3, by Eugène. Chapter 12. The Protectress. The inspectress soon entered with Goualeuse into the little room where Clémence was staying. The pale cheek of the young girl was still slightly coloured in consequence of her conversation with La Louve. "Madame la Marquise, pleased with the excellent character I have given of you," said Madame Armand to Fleur de Marie, "has desired to see you, and will, perhaps, be so good as to have you released from here before the expiration of your time." "I thank you, madame," replied Fleur de Marie timidly, to Madame Armand, who left her alone with the marchioness. The latter, struck by the candid expression of her protégée's features, and by her carriage, so full of grace and modesty, could not help remembering that La Goualeuse had pronounced the name of Rodolph in her sleep, and that the inspectress believed the young prisoner to be a prey to deep and hidden love. Although perfectly convinced that it could not be a question as to the Grand Duke Rodolph, Clémence acknowledged to herself that, with regard to beauty, La Goualeuse was worthy of a prince's love. At the sight of her protectress, whose physiognomy, as we have said, displayed excessive goodness, Fleur de Marie felt herself sympathetically attracted towards her. "My girl," said Clémence to her, "whilst commending the gentleness of your disposition and the discreetness of your behaviour, Madame Armand complains of your want of confidence in her." Fleur de Marie bowed her look, but did not reply. "The peasant's dress in which you were clad when you were apprehended, Your silence on the subject of the place where you resided before you were brought here prove that you conceal certain particulars from us." "Madame " "I have no right to your confidence, my poor child, nor would I ask you any question that would distress you; but, as I am assured that if I request your discharge from prison it will be accorded to me, before I do so I should wish to talk to you of your own plans, your resources for the future. Once free, what do you propose to do? If, as I doubt not, you decide on following the good path you have already entered upon, have confidence in me, and I will put you in the way of gaining an honest subsistence." La Goualeuse was moved to tears at the interest which Madame d'Harville evinced for her. After a moment's hesitation, she replied: "You are very good, madame, to show so much benevolence towards me, so generous that I ought, perhaps, to break the silence which I have hitherto kept on the past, to which I was forced by an oath." "An oath?" "Yes, madame, I have sworn to be secret to justice and the persons employed in this prison as to the series of events by which I was brought hither. Yet, madame, if you will make me a promise " "Of what nature?" "To keep my secret, I may, thanks to you, madame, without breaking my oath, comfort most worthy persons who, no doubt, are excessively uneasy on my account." "Rely on my discretion; I will only say what you authorise me to disclose." "Oh, thanks, madame! I was so fearful that my silence towards my benefactors would appear like ingratitude." The gentle accents of Fleur de Marie and her well selected phrases struck Madame d'Harville with fresh surprise. "I will not conceal from you," said she, "that your demeanour, your language, all surprise me in a remarkable degree. How could you, with an education which appears polished, how could you " "Fall so low, you would say, madame?" said Goualeuse, with bitterness. "Alas! It is but a very short time that I have received this education. I owe this benefit to a generous protector, who, like you, madame, without knowing me, without even having the favourable recommendation which you have received in my favour, took pity upon me." "And who is this protector?" "I do not know, madame." "You do not know?" "He only makes himself known, they tell me, by his inexhaustible goodness. Thanks be to Heaven, he found me in his path." "And when did you first meet?" "One night, in the Cité, madame," said Goualeuse, lowering her eyes. "A man was going to beat me. This unknown benefactor defended me courageously. This was my first meeting with him." "Then he was one of the people?" "The first time I saw him he had the dress and language, but afterwards " "Afterwards?" "The way in which he spoke to me, the profound respect with which he was treated by the persons to whom he confided me, all proved to me that he only assumed the exterior disguise of one of the men who are seen about the Cité." "But with what motive?" "I do not know." "And do you know the name of this mysterious protector?" "Oh, yes, madame," said La Goualeuse, with excitement. "Thank Heaven! For I can incessantly bless and adore that name. My preserver is called M. Rodolph, madame." Clémence blushed deeply. "And has he no other name?" she asked quickly of Fleur de Marie. "I know no other, madame. In the farm where he sent me he was only known as M. Rodolph." "And his age?" "Still young, madame." "And handsome?" "Oh, yes, handsome, noble as his own heart." The grateful and impassioned accent with which Fleur de Marie uttered these words caused a deeply painful sensation in Madame d'Harville's bosom. An unconquerable and inexplicable presentiment told her that it was indeed the prince. "The remarks of the inspectress were just," thought Clémence. "Goualeuse loves Rodolph; that was the name she pronounced in her sleep. Under what strange circumstance had the prince and this unfortunate girl met? Why did Rodolph go disguised into the Cité?" The marquise could not resolve these questions. She only remembered what Sarah had wickedly and mendaciously told her as to the pretended eccentricities of Rodolph. Was it not, in fact, strange that he should have extricated from the dregs of society a girl of such excessive loveliness, and evidently so intelligent and sensible? Clémence had noble qualities, but she was a woman, and deeply loved Rodolph, although she had resolved to bury that secret in her heart's very core. Without reflecting that this was unquestionably but one of those generous actions which the prince was accustomed to do by stealth, without considering that she was, perchance, confounding with love a sentiment that was but excess of gratitude, without considering that, even if this feeling were more tender, Rodolph must be ignorant of it, the marchioness, in the first moment of bitterness and injustice, could not help looking at Goualeuse as her rival. Her pride revolted when she believed she was suffering, in spite of herself, with such a humiliating rivalry; and she replied, in a tone so harsh as to contrast cruelly with the affectionate kindness of her first words: "And how is it then, mademoiselle, that your protector leaves you in prison? How comes it that you are here?" "Oh, madame," said Fleur de Marie, struck at this sudden change of tone, "have I done anything to displease you?" "In what could you have displeased me?" asked Madame d'Harville, haughtily. "It appeared to me just now that you spoke to me so kindly, madame." "Really, mademoiselle, is it necessary that I should weigh every word I utter? Since I take an interest in you, I have, I think, a right to ask you certain questions." Scarcely had Clémence uttered these words than she regretted their severity, first from a praiseworthy return of generosity, and then because she thought by being harsh with her rival she might not learn any more of what she was so anxious to know. In fact, Goualeuse's countenance, just now so open and confiding, became suddenly alarmed. Like the sensitive plant which, on the first touch, curls up its leaves and withdraws within itself, the heart of Fleur de Marie became painfully contracted. Clémence replied, gently, in order that she might not awaken her protégée's suspicions by too sudden a return to a milder tone: "Really, I must repeat that I cannot understand why, having so much to praise your benefactor for, you are left here a prisoner. How is it that, after having returned with all sincerity to the paths of rectitude, you could have been apprehended at night in a forbidden place? All this, I confess to you, appears to me very extraordinary. You speak of an oath, which has bound you to silence, but this very oath is so strange." "I have spoken the truth, madame." "I am sure of that. It is only to see and hear you to be convinced that you are incapable of falsehood. But what is so incomprehensible in your situation makes me the more curious and impatient to have it cleared up. And to this alone must you attribute the abruptness of my language just now. I was wrong, I feel I was; for although I have no claim to your confidence beyond my anxious desire to be of service to you, yet you have offered to disclose to me what you have not yet told to any person. And I can assure you, my poor girl, that this proof of your confidence in the interest I feel for you touches me very nearly. I promise you to keep your secret most scrupulously, if you confide it to me, and I will do everything in my power to effect what you may wish to have done." Thanks to this skilful patching up, the phrase will be excused, we trust, Madame d'Harville regained La Goualeuse's confidence, which had been for a moment repressed. Fleur de Marie, in her candour, reproached herself for having wrongly interpreted the words which had wounded her. "Excuse me, madame," she said to Clémence. "I was, no doubt, wrong not to tell you at once what you desired to know, but you asked me for the name of my preserver, and, in spite of myself, I could not resist the pleasure of speaking of him. Nothing could be more praiseworthy, and it proves how truly grateful you are to him. Tell me how it was that you left the worthy people with whom you were, no doubt, placed by M. Rodolph? Is it to this event that the oath you were compelled to take refers?" "Yes, madame; but, thanks to you, I think I may still keep my word faithfully, and, at the same time, inform my benefactors as to my disappearance. Now, then, my poor girl, I am all attention to you. It is 3 months nearly since M. Rodolph placed me at a farm, which is situated 4 or 5 leagues from Paris." "Did M. Rodolph take you there himself?" "Yes, madame, and confided me to the charge of a worthy lady, as good as she was venerable, and I loved her like my mother. She and the curé of the village, at the request of M. Rodolph, took charge of my education." "And M. Rodolph, did he often come to the farm?" "No, madame, he only came 3 times during the whole time I was there." Clémence's heart throbbed with joy. "And when he came to see you that made you very happy, did it not?" "Oh, yes, madame, it was more than happiness to me, it was a feeling mingled with gratitude, respect, adoration, and even a degree of fear." "Of fear?" "Between him and me, between him and others, the distance is so great." "But what, then, was his rank?" "I do not know that he had any rank, madame." "Yet you allude to the distance which exists between him and others?" "Oh, madame, what places him above all the rest of the world is the elevation of his character, his inexhaustible generosity towards those who suffer, the enthusiasm which he inspires in every one. The wicked, even, cannot hear his name without trembling, and respect as much as they dread him. But forgive me, madame, for still speaking of him. I ought to be silent, for I seek to give you an adequate idea of him who ought to be adored in silence. I might as well try to express by words the goodness of heaven. This comparison is perhaps sacrilegious, madame, but will it offend the good God to compare to him one who has given me the consciousness of good and evil, one who has snatched me from the abyss, one, in fact, to whom I owe a new existence? I do not blame you, my child. I can understand all your noble exaggerations. But how was it that you abandoned this farm, where you must have been so happy?" "Alas, not voluntarily, madame." "Who, then, forced you away?" "One evening, some days since," said Fleur de Marie, trembling even as she spoke, "I was going towards the parsonage house in the village, when a wicked woman, who had used me very cruelly during my infancy, and a man, her accomplice, who had concealed themselves in a ravine, threw themselves upon me, and, after having gagged me, carried me off in a hackney coach." "For what purpose?" "I know not, madame. My ravishers, I think, were acting in conformity to orders from some powerful personages." "What followed this?" "Scarcely was the hackney coach in motion than the wicked creature, who is called La Chouette, exclaimed, 'I have some vitriol here, and I'll rub La Goualeuse's face to disfigure her with it.'" "Oh, horrible, unhappy girl! And who has saved you from this danger?" "The woman's confederate, a blind man called the Schoolmaster." "And he defended you?" "Yes, madame, this and another time also. On this occasion there was a struggle between him and La Chouette. Exerting his strength, the Schoolmaster compelled her to throw out of window the bottle which held the vitriol. This was the first service he rendered me, after having, however, aided in carrying me off. The night was excessively dark. At the end of an hour and a half the coach stopped, as I think, on the high road which traverses the Plain St. Denis, and here was a man on horseback evidently waiting us. 'What,' said he, 'have you got her at last?' 'Yes, we've got her,' answered La Chouette, who was furious because she had been hindered from disfiguring me. 'If you wish to get rid of the little baggage at once, it will be a good plan to stretch her on the ground, and let the coach wheels pass over her skull. It will appear as if she had been accidentally killed.'" "You make me shudder." "Alas, madame, La Chouette was quite capable of doing what she said. Fortunately, the man on horseback replied that he would not have any harm done to me, and all he wanted was to have me confined somewhere for 2 months in a place whence I could neither go out nor be allowed to write to any one. Then La Chouette proposed to take me to a man's called Bras Rouge, who keeps a tavern in the Champs Elysées. In this tavern there are several subterranean chambers, and one of these, La Chouette said, would serve for me a prison. The man on horseback agreed to this proposition, and he promised me that, after remaining 2 months at Bras Rouge's, I should be properly taken care of, and not be sorry for having quitted the farm at Bouqueval." "What a strange mystery!" "This man gave money to La Chouette, and promised her more when she should bring me back from Bras Rouge's, and then galloped away. Our hackney coach continued its way on to Paris, and a short time before we reached the barrier the Schoolmaster said to La Chouette, 'You want to shut Goualeuse up in one of Bras Rouge's cellars, when you know very well that, being so close to the river's side, these cellars are always under water in the winter. Do you wish to drown her?' 'Yes,' replied La Chouette. "Poor girl! What had you ever done to this horrid woman?" "Nothing, madame; and from my very infancy she has always been so full of hatred towards me. The Schoolmaster replied, 'I won't have Goualeuse drowned. She sha'n't go to Bras Rouge's.' La Chouette was astonished as I was, madame, to hear this man defend me thus, and she flew into a violent rage, and swore she would take me to Bras Rouge in spite of the Schoolmaster. 'I defy you,' said he, 'for I have got Goualeuse by the arm, and I will not let go my hold of her; and if you come near her, I'll strangle you.' 'What do you mean, then, to do with her?' cried La Chouette, 'since she must be concealed somewhere for 2 months, so that no one may know where she is?' 'There's a way,' said the Schoolmaster. 'We are going by the Champs Elysées, we will stop the coach a little way off the guard house, and you shall go to Bras Rouge's tavern. It is midnight, and you will be sure to find him. Bring him here, and he shall lead La Goualeuse to the guard house, declaring that she is a fille de la cité, whom he has found loitering about his house. As girls are sentenced to 3 months' imprisonment if found in the Champs Elysées, and as La Goualeuse is still on the police books, she will be apprehended and sent to St. Lazare, where she will be better taken care of and concealed than in Bras Rouge's cellar." "But," answered La Chouette, "Goualeuse will not allow herself to be arrested even at the corps de garde. She will declare that we have carried her off, and give information against us, and, supposing even that she does go to prison, she will write to her protectors, and all will be discovered." "No, she will go to prison willingly," answered the Schoolmaster, "and she shall take an oath not to give any information against any person as long as she is in St. Lazare, nor afterwards either. This is a debt she owes me, for I prevented you from disfiguring her, La Chouette, and saved her from being drowned at Bras Rouge's. But if, after having sworn not to speak, she dares to do so, we will attack the farm at Bouqueval with fire and blood." Then, addressing me, the Schoolmaster added, "Decide, then, take the oath I demand of you, and you shall get off for 3 months in prison. If not, I abandon you to La Chouette, who will take you to Bras Rouge's, where you will be drowned, and we will set Bouqueval farm on fire. So come, decide. I know if you take the oath you will keep it." "And you did swear?" "Alas, yes, madame! I was so fearful they would do my protectors at the farm injury, and then I so much dreaded being drowned by La Chouette in a cellar, it seemed so frightful to me. Another death would have seemed to me less horrid, and, perhaps, I should not have tried to escape it." "What a dreadful idea at your age!" said Madame d'Harville, looking at La Goualeuse with surprise. "When you have left this place, and have been restored to your benefactors, shall you not be very happy? Has not your repentance effaced the past?" "Can the past ever be effaced? Can the past ever be forgotten? Can repentance kill memory, madame?" exclaimed Fleur de Marie, in a tone so despairing that Clémence shuddered. "But all faults are retrieved, unhappy girl!" "And the remembrance of stain, madame, does not that become more and more terrible in proportion as the soul becomes purer, in proportion as the mind becomes more elevated? Alas, the higher we ascend, the deeper appears the abyss which we have quitted." "Then you renounce all hope of restoration, of pardon?" "On the part of others. No, madame, your kindness proves to me that remorse will find indulgence." "But you will be pitiless towards yourself?" "Others, madame, may not know, pardon, or forget what I have been, but I shall never forget it." "And do you sometimes desire to die?" "Sometimes," said Goualeuse, smiling bitterly; then, after a moment's silence, she added, "Sometimes, yes, madame." "Still, you were afraid of being disfigured by that horrid woman, and so you wish to preserve your beauty, my poor little girl. That proves that life has still some attraction for you; so courage, courage!" "It is, perhaps, weakness to think of it; but if I were handsome, as you say, madame, I should like to die handsome, pronouncing the name of my benefactor." Madame d'Harville's eyes filled with tears. Fleur de Marie had said these last words with so much simplicity, her angelic, pale, depressed features, her melancholy smile, were all so much in accord with her words, that it was impossible to doubt the reality of her sad desire. Madame d'Harville was endued with too much delicacy not to feel how miserable, how fatal, was this thought of La Goualeuse. "I shall never forget what I have been," the fixed, permanent, incessant idea which controlled and tortured Fleur de Marie's life. Clémence, ashamed at having for an instant misconstrued the ever disinterested generosity of the prince, regretted also that she had for a moment allowed herself to be actuated by any feeling of absurd jealousy against La Goualeuse, who, with such pure excitement, expressed her gratitude towards her protector. It was strange that the admiration which this poor prisoner felt so deeply towards Rodolph perhaps increased the profound love which Clémence must for ever conceal from him. She said, to drive away these thoughts, "I trust that, for the future, you will be less severe towards yourself. But let us talk of this oath, for now I can explain your silence. You will not denounce these wretches?" "Although the Schoolmaster shared in my carrying off, yet he twice defended me, and I would not be ungrateful towards him." "Then you lent yourself to the plans of these monsters?" "Yes, madame, I was so frightened. The Chouette went to seek for Bras Rouge, who conducted me to the guard house, saying he had found me roving near his cabaret. I did not deny it, and so they took me into custody and brought me here." "But your friends at the farm must be in the utmost anxiety about you." "Alas, madame, in my great alarm, I did not reflect that my oath would prevent me from assuring them of my safety. Now that makes me wretched. But I think, and hope you think so too, that, without breaking my word, I may beg of you to write to Madame Georges at the farm of Bouqueval, and assure her that she need have no fears for me without informing her where I am, for I have promised to be silent." "My child, these precautions will be useless if, at my recommendation, you are pardoned. To morrow you will return to the farm without having betrayed your oath by that, and you may consult your friends hereafter to know how far you are bound by a promise which was extorted from you by a threat." "You believe, then, madame, that, thanks to your kindness, I may hope to leave here very soon?" "You deserve my interest so much that I am sure I shall succeed, and I have no doubt but that the day after to morrow you may rely on going in person to your benefactors." "So soon? Madame, how have I deserved so much goodness on your part? How can I ever repay your kindness?" "By continuing to behave as you have done. I only regret that I cannot do anything towards your future existence. That is a pleasure which your friends have reserved for themselves." At this moment Madame Armand entered abruptly, and with a troubled air. "Madame la Marquise," she said, addressing Clémence with hesitation, "I am deeply pained with a message I have to convey to you." "What do you mean, madame?" "The Duke de Lucenay is below, just come from your house, madame." "La! How you frighten me! What's the matter?" "I do not know, madame, but M. de Lucenay has, he told me, some very distressing information to communicate to you. He learnt from the duchess his lady that you were here, and has come in great haste." "Distressing information!" said Madame d'Harville to herself; then she suddenly shrieked out, in agonised accents, "My daughter! My daughter! My daughter, perhaps! Oh, speak, madame!" "I do not know, your ladyship." "Oh, for mercy's sake, for mercy's sake, take me to M. de Lucenay!" cried Madame d'Harville, rushing out with a bewildered air, followed by Madame Armand. "Poor mother! She fears for her child," said La Goualeuse, following Clémence with her eyes. "Oh, no, it is impossible! At the very moment when she was so benevolent and kind to me such a blow could not strike her! No, no! Once again I say it is impossible!" CHAPTER XIII. Read by Céline Major.